We are hours away from President Biden addressing the Canadian Parliament amid talks of a potential migrant agreement between the U.S. and Canada. This agreement between the two nations, it is expected to be announced at the end of the president's visit in Ottawa later today, and it will reportedly allow Canada to turn away asylum seekers arriving at unofficial points of entry. The agreement would expand a decades-old treaty between the two countries known as the Safe Third Country Agreement by forcing migrants to apply for refugee protection in the first safe country they arrive in, which in this case, it would be the United States. The Bidens expected to wrap up their two-day tour of Canada and then return to the United States later tonight. Here to talk more about it and the recent visit to Canada by President Biden is Professor Regina Bateson. She is an assistant professor, Graduate School of Public at Ottawa University. This is pretty significant as we're looking at it on its face, given the fact there's been so much focus on the southern border. We can't negate to look at what's happening at the northern border. How big of an issue have crossings become, and how significant is this deal or the expansion of this deal between the U.S. and Canada?
Yeah, for Justin Trudeau, the issue of irregular crossings into Canada has become politically significant. But I think it's important to keep in mind that Canada is a very pro-immigration country. A huge percentage of people in Canada are immigrants themselves, about a quarter of the population here. And Canada is actually right now trying to ramp up its immigration to about 500,000 people per year, which is very large in a country this size. So while the irregular border crossings had become a significant political issue here, their kind of practical impact on Canadian society has been quite small.
And just to be clear, this won't apply to Quebec's Roxham Road. Talk about the significance of that crossing.
Yeah, so my understanding is that the new agreement that's now been negotiated will apply to Quebec's Roxham Road.
Okay.
And so that was the primary point, the primary irregular entry point that people were using to enter Canada between official border crossings in order to then apply for asylum here. And there were about 40,000 people per year at its height crossing at that point. And although it's described as irregular migration, I think it's also important for people to understand that at Roxham Road, where people crossed, they would be immediately greeted by the RCMP, their identities would be checked, they would be registered, their property would be searched to make sure they weren't bringing through, drugs or weapons or things like that. So although it was an irregular border crossing in the sense that it's not an official port of entry, and although people could cross there and then seek asylum in Canada, it was quite organized and quite orderly, actually, as far as these things go. So my concern is that by now suddenly closing that point for crossing, what this agreement is actually going to do is to create even more irregular, unsafe, and dangerous migration between the two countries, because people will be pushed to try to evade detection and go across, frozen forests and tundras and prairies.
So you risk people dying trying to make that trek, essentially.
Absolutely. It's just going to push people to try to find more isolated areas of the border to cross and then put themselves at more risk.
This is also about sharing the burden, right? Both nations would like a little bit more help from the other. To have this happen right now has to be a positive sign that at the very least it's being addressed and you understand the need.
Well, I think that, again, the language of burden is strange to hear in a country that's actually trying to recruit more immigrants and trying to encourage more people to come here.
Legally.
There isn't really much evidence that the people who were crossing at Roxham Road posed a burden to Canadian society as a whole.
Who are they then?
So these were folks who were crossing to then apply for refugee status in Canada. And in fact, after they're here, once they apply, if their case is approved, and even while they're waiting for their case to be approved, they can get work permits. They can be working and contributing to the economy. Canada has a huge labor shortage. So that's primarily who was crossing. And it's also important, I think, to note that the asylum process in Canada is somewhat different than in the United States. So particularly when it comes to gender-based violence, that since 1993, that has clearly been recognized as grounds for asylum in Canada. It is not clearly recognized that way in the United States, even under the Biden administration. And Jeff Sessions in the Trump administration actually rolled back the idea of gender-based violence being grounds for asylum in the United States. So someone who's faced gender-based violence, and that's the reason that they're migrating and seeking asylum, their case is going to be handled very differently in Canada than it would be in the United States.
Important discussion. I appreciate your perspective and insight on it. Regina Bateson, thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.